Okay. Okay, so it's already 2:10. I think it's better for us to just start the class. Right, so my apologies. I totally forgot about last week's recording, so I just gave it to you yesterday. So for those of you who have not yet to review the recording, please go through it within this week. Okay, because that was the previous chapter. So practically we kind of talk about project, what is project, and then importantly, very important ialah the trade-off. Okay, so project trade-off too. So project priority metrics and so on. So that's important. You need to know it by heart. Okay, so what it means by when a client is willing to accept cost. What does it mean? So when the client were to constrain time, what does it mean? And when the client were to enhance quality, what does it mean? So very important. So please make sure that you review the recording. Okay, so the previous chapter and this chapter, it is not really sort of like dia tak ada direct relation. So hence we can move on to the next chapter. Okay, so which is project management in Malaysia. All right, so for the next chapter, okay, so basically it's still a general chapter. So if you look through your notes, basically you can see that chapter 1 is on introduction to management. There are two parts of it. The first part is basically on what is management per se. Okay, so lots of it talked about the functions of management, what are the type of management in an organization, what are the roles, responsibility of a manager, and so on. Okay, so skills and so on. So the second part of introduction to management, it is about apa tu, the historical. Okay, so the theoretical, the theory, how actually the theory evolved, starting from manufacturing. Okay, so starting from industrial 1.0, and then slowly it evolve into the current theory that we have lah. Okay, so and you can see that lots of it we still rely on a theory that has been in existence that long ago. Okay, so chapter 2 more or less on that. Sorry, chapter 1 part 2. And then chapter 2 is about history of project management. Okay, so we go right into project management. Okay, so we are no more talking about management in general, but we talk about project management. So basically, you need to first understand what is project. Okay, so there is a time frame, is temporary in nature, and so on. Okay, so project management, and then we talk about the trade-off. Okay, so it's important that when we're talking about project, we need to recognize dia kena ada trade-off. You couldn't get the best of everything. So there will be something that you need to sacrifice, and that is what we highlighted there. And also a simple, very simple tool to assist in identifying the priority. Okay, so project priority metrics. And then I think at the end we talk slightly a little bit about life cycle and so on. Okay, so that's chapter 2. Chapter 3 basically is on project management in Malaysia. So for those who have yet to go through the recording for chapter 2, please do it um, before our next class lah. Okay, so the third chapter is general as well, project management in Malaysia. So chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, it is not specifically going in detail on the process or procedures of project management. Dia masih general. Okay, so the next chapter actually from here, chapter 4 is about project definition. So that is the first process of project management. We need to define a project. Yang tu going into the technicalities of project management. Okay, so this topic is basically still a light topic lah, basically. So it's still subjective in nature, and it is still opinion-based kind of apa tu chapter. Okay, Okay, so for this, it will not be that of a long chapter, this one. Okay, it will be just a short chapter. I think we only have a couple of a few slides on it. Okay, so definitely we will be able to complete by today. And for tomorrow, I would pass you the assignment. Okay, so we'll discuss on the assignment tomorrow for the 1 hour too. Okay. All right, so the learning outcome for this chapter basically to understand the evolution of the involvement, okay, so of project management in Malaysia, understand how it actually affects through economy, the strategic trust for Malaysian industry, the challenges, and the importance of project management. Okay, right. So before we go detail on that, okay, so just a simple definition. What do we mean by construction industry? Okay, so I think we did touch on this a little bit in in the first class, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so we did talk about sectors in Malaysia. Did I or didn't I talk about sectors in Malaysia? I think I did, about the various sectors in Malaysia. And if I'm not mistaken, we mentioned that the highest contributing sector would be the services. Okay, because services besar, there are tourism dalam tu, sports, education, medical, healthcare, insurance, banking, finance, banyak. Okay, so that sector is the highest contributing, and then we have other sectors as well. Okay, so important, we have manufacturing, and was also mentioned that we manufacture quite a lot of important elements actually for all these electronic parts for certain apa tu assembly. Okay, so manufacturing, and then car dah kurang kot because prior we no more own proton, right? So we do have Myvi and so on, but yeah, the glorious days has kind of passed away. Okay, so other than that, we have agricultural, we have fishery, mining, forestry, logging, and construction. Okay, so in terms of GDP, gross domestic product, or basically the profit given from construction to the to the economy, not that much. Okay, so we are not providing in terms of monetary that much, but we are basically more like an enable. Okay, so we enable other industries to perform. So without factory, then without us building the factory, all those facilities, things wouldn't be moving. So we kind of provide the social environment. So whether it's a hospital, school, day one, orang ramai, but without those things, without construction producing something like that, then the social environment itself is not there, and nothing could be done. So that's why we are not focusing on contributing monetary base, but in terms of the output of earth that actually enables other industry, social community to even evolve. Okay. Right. So when we talk about construction, okay, so our customers are basically the state government, public, private companies. Okay, so state government ialah kerajaan negeri lah. Okay, so state government, kerajaan negeri. So every state would have the state government, and there are areas which are governed by the state government, and there are also areas that is governed by the federal government. Okay, so the areas governing will be different. So state government maybe basically a lot of mineral. Okay, so hasil tanah and sort of. Okay, and also state road. There are state road. there are government road, there are private road. So we need to also look into that. Okay, so obviously when we talk about state government, the funding comes from the state. Okay, so it can be jalan kampung under state government. Okay, maybe it's their initiative. And there are also jalan persekutuan. Okay, so under federal government. So public project, basically project that benefits the public lah. Okay, so school, government hospital, so those are basically public project. And private customers are basically profit oriented. Okay, so especially residential houses, if it's private, then it's profit oriented. But there are also houses built by government with maybe, incentive, ataupun we call it sold at a lower price, macam PPR ke. Okay, so rumah prima, so those are under government with maybe less profit lah compared to private. Okay, so customers could be that. Okay, so you have state, you have federal government. Federal usually would be conducted by kementerian lah. Alright, so if school, it would be funded by kementerian apa tu? Pelajaran. Okay, so the Ministry of Education. If hospital, funded and managed by the Ministry of Health. Okay, so something like that. So public and private. Okay, so parties involved as well. I think we did discuss about that as well. That's what I thought. Okay, so if I did not discuss about it, or if you require further information or further explanation, please talk with me. Okay, because I kind of like thought I might have mentioned about it. But if I didn't, just stop me somewhere and then just ask me. All right, so parties involved, basically you have the main contractor. Normally you would have quite some subcontractors underneath. The reason main contractor itself, if it's a huge project, it's quite difficult for the main contractor to have expertise in everything. So imagine if a main contractor would have expertise all the way from concreting sampai architectural work, sampai plumbing, sampai roofing. Normally they do not have that, and in fact with that, probably the workers, they do not have that many workers of that. So maybe sometime you can see the main contractor probably would be in charge of concreting work. Okay, so they might have sufficient workers for concreting, but mungkin all those plumbing work will be given to subcontractor. Okay, so you would have parties involved, main contractor, and then the client. Okay, so your client could be any of the customer kat atas tu. Okay, so it can be, if it's a state project, then state government, public, ministries, private, and so on. Okay, and also consultants. Okay, so the most common consultant, the architect, the engineer, civil and structural engineer, mechanical and electrical engineer. So the most basic lah. Okay, QS, quantity surveyor. You need quantity surveyor to come up with the estimation. Okay, so tender documents and so on. So other than that, if you're talking about the project which are highly specialized, then you might get hydrologist, geotechnical engineer, and so on. Okay, so if a project is highly specialized. Okay. Okay, so mostly those are the parties. I think at the initial part of the course, we talk about local authorities. Okay, so those might not be financing, but they have interest in the project. Okay, so local council, local agencies. Okay, so local authorities, supplier. Okay, so normally supplier as well. Okay, and the finished product, basically, we would want to deliver it within the time, within the cost, and within the quality. That is the aim of every project lah. Okay, so given the contract, you should deliver as you have signed it off. Okay, so it could involve residential, commercial building, or infrastructure. Okay, so far any question? Tak ada. Okay, so the industry is one of the important elements that contribute to our economy. Okay, so the decline in construction performance has resulted in the need of strengthening the construction foundation through project management to face the current and future challenges. One of the important element that I've mentioned, not in the form of monetary, but in the form of enabling the economy. Okay, so it enables the running of the economy, especially when we are also talking about employment. Okay, so the construction is one of the highest employer. Okay, so biggest number, except that sometimes the employment to what do you call the foreign workers. Okay, so in terms of engineers there are, and then skilled workers there are, tapi we are basically employing a lot of foreign workers as well. Okay, so enablers. Okay, but when we talk about construction, okay, so it differs than manufacturing. Okay, so if you can recall in the slides that you have done, or in the Padlet that you have done, so we are comparing basically construction and manufacturing. Okay, so and if we look into the performance of construction in terms of productivity, there is one famous graph that shows manufacturing, it is increasing over time, and construction is basically decreasing over time. Okay, so basically, obviously, when we are comparing manufacturing and construction, sometimes people might critique. Okay, so it's mentioned that construction and manufacturing is two different sectors. Okay, you can't compare them apple to an apple. So you can't say that, okay, we compare their productivity apple to an apple. It's not the same. There are schools of thought yang argue about that lah. Okay, so why should we compare construction and manufacturing when both, even though both are basically economy, generating economy sectors, but manufacturing is very much different. Okay, so one for certain, it is repetitive in nature. Okay, so every day benda yang sama. Okay, so the workers go in with the same routine every day. Okay, and if they are parked under a certain apa tu department, certain, let's say packaging, itu je lah they will be doing every single day. So repetitive. Okay, so sometimes repetitive makes a person better at it. Okay, so that is not everywhere. Okay, so you get better at doing your job. Secondly, manufacturing is basically predictable. Okay, so we kind of have a certain set of outcome. Okay, for today, what is the volume that we want to produce? So the amount in terms of number. So you kind of like could target based on the number of machine running, workers working, and what is the productivity that you intend to have. Construction, we kind of can more or less say, okay, at the end of the day, we need this certain meter square of slab to be concreted. But something can happen in between. Okay, so it might, as simple as, for example, a slump test fail. Okay, so you might have a certain trip whereby your concrete slump test fail, you can use it, okay, too watery, for example. So that could cause certain delay. Okay, so there are things that are beyond the control of everyone. Okay, so weather, for example, is beyond our control. So let's say you are intending to concrete a slab and pouring rain, pun you dah tak boleh. So the predictability is very low in construction compared to manufacturing. Okay, so Thus, it creates variability. Okay, so you can predict that much, you tak boleh agak. Okay, maybe some productivity, which means the graph is low, high, low, high, low, high. So you don't get the graph to be a nice horizontal line for construction. For manufacturing, you might get it at a quite constant line, horizontal line. Okay, that is the productivity expected. But if you're talking about construction, your graph might go up and down, up and down, up and down, depending on so many variables. Okay, so they are highly uncertain for construction and highly variable. Okay, so hence quite a lot of difference lah in terms of manufacturing. Okay, so obviously the type of production that we are producing. Okay, so the bulk construction is bigger and so on. Cuma, what is the similarity between manufacturing and construction? Since we are talking about so much of difference, what is the similarity that draw us to look into comparing them and putting us construction in a situation that we need to learn from manufacturing? What is the similarity? Any idea? I believe you see a lot of differences, right? But if there are so much of differences, we practically we should not adapt anything from manufacturing because they are different. So we can't copy anything what has been done in manufacturing and try to implement that in construction. It's about so much of difference. So might as well tak adapt anything. But the movement currently is basically looking into adapting what manufacturing is doing. Okay, so manufacturing doing something, okay, we should adapt their theory into construction. Construction alone, we do not have any theory. So we do not have theory of construction, tak ada. Okay, so a lot of the things that we actually learn or try to implement in construction, it comes from manufacturing. So, what is the similarity that makes us like, okay, we adapt from them because we still have some similarity. Tapi apa? Anything that you can think of similar?
Both need customer.
Okay, correct. Both would have customer. Cuma how well we satisfy our customer is slightly different. But both memang ada customer, betul? Okay, so accept that the customer satisfaction tu lah. So for manufacturing, we sometimes like car, right? So we customize. Okay, so if there are certain customer that require highly customized car, we can do that. Okay, but for construction, we could not satisfy that level to the customer. Normally one package je. So if the house double story with that kind of brother, macam tu je lah for every single house. So the satisfaction that could be given to the customer is not to that extent lah. And for construction, the satisfaction to the point of apa yang we sign in the contract. Okay, the time, cost, quality, achieve, consider customer tu okay lah, is happy. But manufacturing, we might look into so many other things. Okay, so yes, customer. Lagi? Apa lagi? That creates similarity that we think that fine, we should learn from manufacturing. Ada idea? So actually it's production. Okay, so both would need to go through production to produce an output. Okay, and then you have the customer for the customer. Okay, so both would have certain level of production required. So that brings us together because there are processes in construction, there are processes in manufacturing. So the we are not going through the same situation, but we are doing the same thing. We are producing something. There is an output from there. So that causes us to think that we are also doing the same thing. Cuma our process is slightly different than manufacturing. And how we actually could improvise the way we are doing things to replicate manufacturing. So that's why the how the future holds for construction is it is about a lot, because when we're trying to incorporate, for example, robots, robotic and so on in construction, how are we going to move on and do that if we are still using labor in our concreting? So actually the notion with robotics lah, using robots in construction and so on, it is really moving towards manufacturing construction. So it's like manufacturing construction, meaning to say the high reliance on IBS, high reliance on off-site manufacturing, precast. So actually, that's the way to go. Having to say so, way to go, we have actually introduced IBS 30 years ago in the industry. Benda tu dah is already when it was introduced 30 years ago, the topic was a very trendy topic lah. Okay, so I believe everyone knows what is IBS. Okay, so industrialized building system, whereby the elements that we are going to install on the at the site are precast. Okay, so we produce that in the factory. So we manufacture the elements and then we install it on the site, right? So that is IBS. But until now, the acceptance by the industry or how much it has been used by the industry is still limited. So to be honest, I think if JKR do not have that kind of clause with how many percent needs to include IBS, I don't think we are still there. Okay, so there are quite a lot that actually being done overseas. You can see they have actually moved into modular construction. They even construct the whole house and they just pindahkan and place it on the site. So a lot of things have been done at the factory. The whole house basically could be done at the factory, but not very much here in construction. Okay, for example, modular construction, the entire bathroom or shower area is done at the factory. You just need to transport it, place it, install it on the site. But not in Malaysia, we are still not there yet that much lah. Okay, so most of the things we still cast in situ, and I'm not sure, probably in future, but it goes back still it goes back to the demand and supply. Among the reasons given for IBS, one is the cost of it. So probably because the supply is not that much. There are not many factories doing IBS. Okay, so if the supply is low, then the price will be high, then the demand will be low. So the egg and chicken and egg story, which comes first, the demand or the supply? So when you have such a situation, it's quite difficult. So actually, it is not only looking into each company, why are they not adopting it and so on. It is basically the entire industry. So if the movement is really towards there, it should be everyone thinking about designing in such a way. Sebab sekarang, if the design is still normal concrete, cast in situ, then there's no point because the designers are still designing that. So, and I'm not even sure whether the designers are all designers able to design precast. Maybe it's not. They are not able to design a precast system. So, banyaklah dia punya tu, a lot of factors that actually give way. Okay, anyhow, coming back to this, Okay, so there is a decline, and basically there are this is a situation that require us to manage lah. Okay, and the gross domestic product by industry is only 2.7 in 2006. I think now this is what we're talking about, 10 over years. Okay, so it's around 4 to 6%. Okay, so you can see that generally the industry does not produce that much. 4 to 6% of the total. So sebenarnya dia sikit lah. Okay. Okay, so gross domestic product, what is it? Okay, so it's the market value of all officially final goods produced in a country within a year, within a given time frame. Usually we'll see GDP per year. Okay, so often considered an indicator of a country's standard of living. So basically, okay, so currency value, okay, of all the goods, services produced within a two. It is the total income of a nation, and sometimes we would associate GDP as the nation's economic well-being and a measure of nation's economic growth. Okay, so the higher the GDP is better. So how do we calculate GDP, or what are basically included in contributing to GDP? One, consumption by the household. Okay, so it's very important that actually it's very important for the economy of the country for people to spend. You can see that especially during inflation, when people are not spending, um, the inflation is high, okay, and people tend to save. Is bad. Okay, so that's why during those times, and even now, basically, there are incentive given by the government in the form that there will be transaction made. Okay, so if there are any consumption, so you buy your grocery, clothes, or whatsoever, so that contributes to the economy running. So that's why when we are talking about foreign labors, constraining us, because for our country, we produce what do we call it? Our notes. Okay. And imagine end of the month, every month, you have these foreign workers withdrawing millions. Okay, which means you're talking about millions of ringgit flowing out of the country. So when a lot of money flowing out of the country, the what do you call the bank negara, they have to print. Okay, and when they print, sometimes that's why when happened this economic in 1998 to what do we call it, Hmm, what's the word manipulation by certain entity. Okay, so when they buy a lot of our currency, it is good to a certain point. But however, when we cetak balik, okay, and because it has been bought a lot, and then we cetak the money, and at one point they just sell off all the ringgit in the market, menjadikan ringgit banyak in the market. That lowers the value of the ringgit. Okay, so it's like do you remember Wang Pisang last time during the Japanese time? Pernah belajar tak? Wang Pisang, pernah dengar tak? Pernah ke tak pernah
Tak.
dengar? Pernah.
Ah,
Pernah.
If I'm not mistaken lah, Wang Pisang was during Japanese time where the money means nothing. It was printed so much. Hold on, let me double confirm before I say something wrong. Wang Pisang Jepun. Oh, they even sell it now, yeah, on Lazada, 39 ringgit. It was meaningless at the point of time lah. Okay, so this was done by Japanese government. They issued the dollar in Malaya and Borneo. So much so that it was so much in the market that it was so meaningless. So you can have like so much of wang waktu tu, but meaningless because you can't buy anything. But now at least it costs, ikan, walaupun wang pisang ni, 10 ringgit ni, ikan, they are selling it for 39 ringgit kat Lazada. Not bad. If you keep for long lah. But actually it's something like wang pisang lah. Okay, so when the money is worthless. Okay, so terlalu banyak. So that's why we can't just kurang dalam market, then we print. Tak boleh. So there will be some what do you call, manipulation by certain tu susah. Okay, but anyhow, for GDP, basically we need consumption by the household. So the economy must be running. So that's why there are incentive given to people. So when everyone is keeping their money, saving it, is really not good. So that's why there are incentive dalam bentuk apa tu sekarang they give dalam bentuk tu. So 1,000 plus for all the B40 macam tu. And so that it could be spent. Okay, so and it generates or runs the economy at the same. Dia macam engine. You need to keep it running. So if everyone is not spending and keeping their money at home, it's not good for the economy. Okay, and investment by business household. Okay, so any fixed asset for production, any transaction in terms of equipment, new home, and then inventory. So that's why there are incentive to actually for new home buyers. Okay, so those incentive for new home buyers, sales tax free, and so on. Okay, and also obviously another issue that we are currently having is houses which are not sold. So if you see the current economic situation, especially for houses, houses yang mid range to high range tu banyak not sold. Okay, especially in Selangor, Johor, I think pun banyak. So there are several states whereby the mid-range condo, for example, mid-range to high-range to not sold because it's the situation is not good. And but what you going to do with the houses kan? Okay, so that's why there are some incentive dan sebagainya lah. Okay, so inventory as well. Okay, so inventory in the form of equipment and so on. Okay, the third one, importantly, actually government expenditure. Okay, so is actually whatever government does back to the people, that actually includes in the form of GDP. Okay, so that's why you see to run the economy, the government needs to spend. Okay, so on roads, on schools, and so on. Okay, and net export is basically the value of export of each sector. So that's why tourism, manufacturing, they are very high in export. So because manufacturing, we export that a lot. Okay, but for construction, what do we export? We might export our services. Okay, there are some projects. G7 company, there are companies who are having international contract, but tak banyak. Okay, so for construction, we are not that much of an export value compared to other sectors. So other sectors is so much. We export really a lot, including our balak and so on. Okay, so our log and so on. Tapi itulah sayang. Sometimes we export our bahan mentah. Okay, so we export getah, for example, in the pure form. And then we buy back tire from the company, from the country, and a much higher price. So that's one thing that actually we are losing quite a lot. So we biasa export in the raw form, and then we buy it balik in the form yang dah ready, but at a so high price. I mean, compared to the raw form lah. So the best is obviously we use our own raw resources, we produce the final product, we export the final product. Obviously that will be the best lah. Tapi sometimes we banyak export the raw and then we buy the final product from other people. Okay, but anyhow, next export, net export ialah jumlah export minus import. So we try to increase our export and then try to minimize our import. So that's why agriculture actually plays a huge role, especially in terms of providing food to our nation. So actually we import banyak. Beras we import, all those food we import. So if we can actually keep it running here, okay, so if we have the capability to actually produce our own beras sufficient for local usage, then we don't need to import. But unfortunately, ada banyak benda yang is insufficient lah. So we import quite a lot in terms of food juga daripada luar. Okay, so GDP equals to your consumption plus your investment plus government spending plus net export. Okay, so you can see that from here ada banyak yang in terms of construction we are kind of losing basically. Okay, so another way of looking at that. Okay, so personal consumption, investment, whether in the form of fixed investment ataupun inventory. Okay, so fixed investment are something like residential, tanah, for example. Okay, so you're going to buy a piece of land, inventory like equipment, car, for example. Okay, so those will be your investment, government, and net export. Okay, export minus import. So what is not included in the GDP? Any intermediate goods, not final goods. Okay, so second-hand items, any black market, obviously lah. Okay, so any financial transaction, household production, and any transfer of payment. So those are not included in GDP. Okay, so far any question? Apa dah eh? Okay. Okay, so if there are none, let's move on to the next one. Involvement of project management in Malaysia. Okay, so if you can still recall, project management institute started more or less timing 1960s, more or less macam tu lah. Okay, so 1969, they have something called Project Management Institute. And that institute is basically an institute that actually came up with the PM book tu yang bawah 1981. So Project Management Book of Knowledge, which is applicable to all sectors. Okay, project of all sectors, not only construction. So this is where that they identify that there are tools, there are techniques, there are procedures, there are processes that should be done to manage the project properly. So nowadays, Project Management Institute basically functions a lot as like, a body that provides certification. It's not accreditation because um, it is not a professional body. So it is not like board of engineers ke, board of architect ataupun board of QS. It's not like that. So it is it provides professional certification but not accreditation. Okay, so hence we do not have project, meaning to say that there is no act governing project management. Okay, so for engineers, there are acts governing it. So there are undang-undang. Basically, as an engineer, once you register with the Board of Engineers Malaysia, you have certain ethics, you have certain rules, certain regulation that you need to follow. Recently, I think, recently, a court actually jatuhkan hukuman kepada engineer. I think I read it somewhere. So you have to be careful being an engineer, not just designing without thoroughly thinking or without being responsible. So things are escalating nowadays, especially in safety and health. And accidents happen, and sometimes not only contractor, because commonly we think, okay, contractor is accountable, but a structural engineer basically is held accountable for the accident. because the design was not correctly done, especially the false work design though. So it was not correctly done, caused a collapse and the death of one foreign worker. So that one is governed under the Act of Engineers Act. Okay, same goes to architect. It is governed under Act. Same goes to QS, is also under Act, professional body. But PMI dia tak ada macam tu. There is no act to say that you have wrongly managed a project due to the schedule and so on, tak ada. Okay, so it does not involve life per se lah. But as an engineer, when you design, you are fully accountable for the building to be safe as long as you have designed it for. Okay, so cuma itulah I think the hukuman yang diberikan for the engineer was 28,000 or 10 years jail. So sometimes it could be seen as 28,000 for an engineer once you have the experience. Is not difficult for you to get 28,000 to pay it off. Okay, so obviously they will select paying 28,000 rather than 10 days jail lah. So obviously that, but sometimes to put in that perspective, nyawa seorang is 28,000 lah. The equivalent to of one life is basically 28,000. Is it too high? Is it too low? Or can we actually compensate a life with money? So, dia banyak issue on ethical and things macam tu lah. Anyhow, but that is currently the rule that we have. So, could be debatable lah basically benda tu. Okay, so PMI is not that type of professional body. So it is a body that actually provides certification. So if you go through their examination, then you can be certified as a professional project manager, professional project, something like that, PMP. Okay. All right. Anyhow, coming back here, around 1981, basically the PMI produced this guideline, this guidebook. Okay, so it contains guideline of practice. And in Malaysia, it was just recently formed, 1990s lebih kurang. Okay, so they call it Malaysia chapter. So normally, a lot of things that actually in that form, they are the chapter lah. Okay, so PMI chapter. And currently the focus is for sustainable development in the construction process. Okay, so and the most recent word related to sustainable development is in compliance to the SDG lah. Okay, so if you look into the SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, it should incorporate the environmental, economy, and also the social aspect of sustainability. Okay, so it's a non-profit global professional organization for project management knowledge, information, professionalism, and a lot of networking lah, basically PMI ni. Okay. All right, so he's headquartered in US, and then we have one in Malaysia, and it comes out with the standard research in project management, education. Okay, so networking basically itulah. Okay. Okay, so this one in general in the form of points. Okay, so produces the standard certification, especially PMP lah. Okay, project management professional. It's a test conducted. Okay, so but pretty expensive juga lah dia punya certification PMP ni. Okay, so research center, they provide also publications. Okay, so kind of bulletin ataupun in journal form. Professional development, training, networking among the members, and also networking and fellowship. Okay. Okay, so the most famous one would be the PMP, Project Management Professional, and then also Certified Associated in Project Management. Okay, so this is the form of certification. And why do we need the form of certification? So these are some of it. So because for example, all engineers, okay, so all engineers who graduate, we have certain level of technical aspect, okay, so of designing and so on. But for project management, okay, there are not many credit hours invested in your course of study. Mungkin ni je kot construction project management. And then maybe you have a little bit in engineers in society, you have a little bit in bill of quantity subject, and some elective that you might take. Okay, so but with that, are we prepared to be the project manager? Okay, so what makes us fit to be a project manager? So one of it, to to acknowledge that you have the credential to be the project manager, ialah this certification. One of it lah. Not necessary. It is not a must to say that, okay, as a project manager, kena ada PMP. Not necessary, but a lot of these G7 organizations, they kind of like send their staff to at least get that, so that because while you have gone through the courses, you have done the test, the exam, it shows that you have the competency to actually manage a project using the tools, knowledge that you have actually learned from the guidelines and so on. Okay, so one of the way for us to say that, okay, this engineer is competent to be a project manager. Sebab kalau tak, all civil engineers without PMP, then it's just macam tu lah. How can we say that we are better than the others as well? So it provides professional personal recognition. Okay, so it expedites the professional advancement. It will create you job opportunity, because if there are not many PMP, then you are on the go lah. Basically, on you have the leverage basically on the job. Provides framework for standardized project management, increase the value in organization. That's why I mentioned that most of the companies who are actually having allocation funding untuk this, usually they will send their workers for that. Ataupun the worker themselves would take the initiative to get that certification. Okay, and it's a global certification. Yang PMP tu is actually international certification, whereby you can bring it to any overseas to it is recognized. Okay, so that's some of dia punya tu lah. Okay, so far any question? Okay, so if you don't have any question, let's just have a break here dalam five minutes or so. Okay, so it's 3 now, more or less. We'll come back around 3:10, okay? Tak banyak lagi. We have around several slides more. Okay, so just come back around 3:10. Let's resume our lecture. Kita kena habiskan ni. Okay, a little bit more to go. Okay, so let's continue the effect of project management through economy. Okay, so these are some of the effects of project management lah, in terms of economy, increase in quantity, quality of the product. Okay, so opportunities to expand the services, improve growth, improve customer satisfaction, better flexibility. So these are some of it. So it's just that I don't want to go detail on it, because it can be anything. So when we are talking about the effects, particularly positive effects of project management, banyak lah. Practically, you can complete the project on time. Obviously, your project would have the standard or the requirement address dan sebagainya. So dia banyak lah basically. Okay, so these are just some of it. Okay, so better efficiency in delivering services. Okay, so it provides a roadmap So if you look into project management book of knowledge, or if you look into any procedure, so project management too, there is a certain processes to it. So there are certain protocols to it. So there are certain input to a certain process. So it provides more or less like a roadmap lah, basically from the start. Okay, for us, basically in the course of our study, we will start with knowing what is project definition. Okay, so what do you need to do in project definition, and what will be the output of your project definition before you move on to the next activity. Okay, so there is a roadmap. Okay, and then effectiveness in delivering the services. Okay, so same strategies that allow you to complete one project. And usually once you identify the best method, usually you will use the same processes to complete the others. Okay, so greater standing, competitive edge. So obviously lah. Okay, so with that you'll be able to complete your project within the time frame and so on. Increase risk assessment. Sebenarnya one of the items under project management, or one of the elements, key elements while we are conducting project, ialah risk assessment. Cuma it is not included like a chapter in this your course of study. Actually, risk management is one huge topic by itself. So there are risks. Okay, what are the potential risks to our project, especially when we are there are so many aspects. Risk could be risk from the point of material supply risk. Okay, so if we are trying to utilize material from overseas, okay, imported materials. So the risk would be potentially, probably will be issues at the immigration, maybe, or there are supply issues. If there are none of that, COVID created quite a huge issue as well lah. Okay, so if you're talking about COVID with the border closed and so on, it's a lot. Okay, so the risk can be, it depends on what type of risk we are talking about. Okay, safety and health risk, material risk, manpower risk. If you're talking about specialized project, especially expertise in such an area, so and so on. So risk basically is one of the main elements. Okay, so you identify risk, and then normally once you have identified the risk, we need to assess how huge is the risk, how severe is the risk, how frequent the risk could happen. Okay, so there are some risks which might be severe. Okay, meaning to say that if we do not get that material on time, the other processes cannot happen. So it's quite a huge risk that might affect dia punya time delay, for example. Okay, and how probable that thing would happen? Maybe the probability is high. Okay, so mungkin that is the material which always goes on shortage, and you don't have sufficient supplier for it, and potentially that could happen. Kalau kita dah identify that as the risk, okay, so highly severe and highly probable happening, then kita eliminate lah the risk. So don't lah go ahead nak juga select that certain material. So risk is very important, because at least we have to know beforehand, okay, this could potentially happen, and if that happen, what we can do. Okay, if we nak kena juga that material, what could be the plan B? At least do that. But the best, obviously, we eliminate the risk. Maybe choose some other material with lower risk, for example. Okay. And another one is basically customer satisfaction. Obviously, while you have actually addressed all of this, obviously at the end of the day, you will have a happy customer. Okay, so challenges faced by the construction industry. These are just a small part of it. There are
Madam?
so many other challenges. Okay, yes.
Madam tak present ke?
Alamak, patutlah. Hold on So jadi saya dah habiskan satu slide. You did not tell me that I did not present. Okay, 2 slide actually. All right. Thank you for highlighting that. So, okay, we have gone through this slide sebenarnya je now. And this slide. Okay, so I did mention a little bit here and there lah. Okay, so risk kat sini sebenarnya when I talk about it. And also customer satisfaction. Okay. And the next slide is basically on the challenges. Okay, so these are some of the challenges, not conclusive lah. And it's just small part of it. There are so many other challenges. Okay, so these are just some prominent ones. Okay, so the first one is basically in terms of environment. Okay, so I think everyone is pretty clear when we talk about construction. In terms of environment, nothing good kind of come out of it, especially when we are constructing on greenfield areas. Okay, so green, bare land, kita clear everything, and then we build something on top of that. So nothing really good comes out of it. So cuma maybe nowadays we are moving towards building which are apa tu net zero okay, so which are basically self-sustaining, using renewable energy as the electricity, solar panel installed for that, lighting using solar. So it kind of like, unless you're coming out with such a facility which is self-sustaining with renewable energy, maybe it's okay. Tapi we are kind of like far from it lagi lah. Maybe there are some initiative done, but well, to a certain extent. But still, at the same time, we also think about, yelah, we need building to allocate our population. Okay, but sometimes how much is too much, how little is too little. So it's still like a gray area lah. Okay, so but anyhow, the idea is when we're talking about project or construction, it will give negative impact to the environment unless we are talking about project with the intention of brownfield. Okay, so brownfield whereby the building exists, maybe with certain risks in terms of chemical, such as factory. Okay, so all factory area, we reuse balik bangunan tu. Okay, but obviously need to be done in a delicate manner lah, with all those chemical emission yang ada and so on, any chemical related elements that might give way to our health pula. Okay, so one of it is environment. So that's why in the CI, this is actually taken from CIMP, Construction Industry Master Plan. So the master plan was for until 2010 to 2015, more or less, Construction Industry Master Plan. And then CIDB came out with another document called CITP, Construction Industry Transformation Program. So that was from 2016 to 2020 effective year. But more or less, the points more or less relates there. Okay, so more or less similar points that you can find: environment, the image, the workmanship, the quality, the bureaucracy. Another thing is internationalization of the industry, construction industry. So those are some of the key points daripada CITP tu. Okay, and environment is one of the major trusts in the CITP. It's one trust by itself, strategic trust, environmental trust. Okay. All right. So next, the lack of efficiency and effective approach. So this is also one of the items that have been highlighted. So a way to go by it. Okay. So because it was mentioned that we are quite slow in what we call it processing documents, especially when it is submitted to local authority. Okay, so all those intent documents, so proposal, the drawings. So it takes quite a while to go through the council, local agencies, and so on. So that's one of the initiative that they have taken, which is what we call one-stop center. Kalau dulu tu, you need to go to this certain agency to get the approval, but now they have this one-stop center whereby the local council act as the one-stop center. Okay, so Majlis Daerah, Majlis Perbandaran, and so on. And also submission of drawing using online system as well, document using online. Okay. And also other things are basically using building information modeling. So that's the strategy. Another strategy is basically the emphasis on using building information modeling in coming up with a drawing. Okay, so these are some of the approach lah, basically. Okay, IBS obviously is still in the picture, walaupun dah 30 years. Okay, so it is still being highly encouraged to use as an approach yang for the industry. Okay. All right. So other than that, unable to attract local due to the image that we have. Okay. So dirty, difficult, dangerous. So this is quite the common association related to construction. Okay. So dirty, difficult, dangerous. It is hot. Basically, that is the image. So that's why we rely a lot on foreign workers, okay, especially doing all those concreting. So it requires that much of what you call energy, that much of a strength, and to work under the sun. So those are the things that quite difficult for us to attract the locals. That's the reason sebenarnya IBS is one of the way to go, so that we don't need to rely that much on foreign workers. IBS is basically macam Lego. So once you have actually manufactured at the factory, you just need to assemble on the site. So your assembly should be done by skilled workers, okay? And skilled workers could be paid high. So we are not talking only about, hold on I need to get this call. Sekejap boleh? Tunggu sekejap Okay, sorry let's continue. Okay, so coming back to here. Okay, so basically the image is one of the problem for construction. So that's the reason that IBS is one of the way actually sebenarnya to save the image. So that we don't need any in situ concreting work yang berat. and basically it could be easily fixed on the site. And with that, you do not need to have unskilled workers or workers yang foreign workers. We can rely on skilled workers, and skilled workers could be paid high. So that's one thing about it lah. So that's the reason that IVS is sebenarnya is a way to go sebenarnya. But cuma itulah sometimes even when I was talking about when I was because we have a project with Felda, and there are Felda entrepreneurs, basically F&B entrepreneurs, food and beverage and so on. Even not only construction, basically F&B pun is quite difficult for them to get local workers to actually work. So sometimes it's about yelah not only construction lah, we are talking about F&B itself. With the current situation, we can see quite a lot of actually vacancies, tapi difficult to get locals to work. So apatah lagi construction, which is pretty heavy lah compared to the other industries. So that's why one of it is basically hire them as a skilled worker. Okay. All right. So next, unable to secure, manage the time, finance. This is also one of it, because since it is construction is considered high risk sector, it's not easy to get finance. Okay, especially finance from the bank. Okay, insufficient knowledge in providing integrated solution in foreign project. Okay, so this issue raised in regards to the lack of internationalization. So internationalization relates back to the GDP. Okay, so construction is one of the sector with low GDP. One of the biggest drawback is whereby we do not have the export value. Okay, so minimal. So we might get import value actually quite banyak. So we might be getting contractors from China, foreign countries, consultants, but we export very much less than that. Okay, and hence actually there is initiative for us in the trust too, okay, CITP, to actually train or to actually give how do we actually train our contractors, consultant to actually obtain foreign projects. Okay. Public view on the project, similar lah. It goes back to construction being dirty, difficult, dangerous. And also at the same time, we have challenges with bribery juga lah. Okay, so I think you can see from the news quite a lot juga the bribery cases that actually involve construction. Okay. But itulah sometimes this kind of things, it goes back to our ethics and our value of being not only an engineer, a human juga lah. Okay, so a person basically. Okay, so the value that we embed, is money that important to the point that you want to sacrifice the honor of yourself lah sebenarnya benda tu. Your principle, your value, the dignity, sebenarnya benda tu banyak benda. Is it that important, you see? Is that the value of yourself sebenarnya benda tu? You know, susah hard to say, but I hope all of you here do your job honestly, sincerely, honestly, and you will get the satisfaction from there. Sometimes you can have that much of money in the world, so much of money in the world, tapi at the end, are you really that happy? So sometimes we have to live within our means, tu penting lah. Okay, so we have to live within our means, and the work that we are doing, it is sincere, honest, and probably you will get happiness out of that lah. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so if we place the challenges, okay, in regards to the stakeholders, okay, especially with clients and so on, banyak lagi. Okay, so there are so many others. So these are just example. Okay, so for the client, there might be challenges in terms of payment, especially if the funding is cukup-cukup je. Okay, so That's why it's quite important when a client were to fund something, the funding should be ensured that it is sustainable. Okay, so the finance payment. So if the client started missing the monthly payments, it will affect the entire project. Okay, so if the client does not have the sufficient to, memang the entire project gone. Okay, so the monthly payment as agreed end of the month should be provided. Okay, and client sophistication. Well, the word sophistication can be positive. So a sophisticated person can sound classy, but a sophisticated client might be negative in a sense that too many things, too complex to the point that there are too many changes. Tu pun masalah juga. Okay, so especially if there are constant changes because a spoiled for choices macam tu. So client sophisticated. Unrealistic contract duration pun sama, okay, because sometimes as a client, they want everything the best, okay, so complete it with the best scope, shortest time, cheapest cost, without realizing that benda tu unrealistic, okay, so that needs to be spelled out to the client, penting. So sometimes we just okay, but at the end the project could not be realized because memang dia impossible. Okay, so it's mission impossible. So you need to be saying that to the client lah. And you as a contractor, sama ada are you willing to work within the time frame. Okay, so contractors can be so many. Okay, so these are just some of it. Poor site management. Okay, so improper construction method or improper construction planning conducted, sequencing tak betul, you kind of like overlap certain certain activities. So, for example, supposedly your electrical conduit, it needs to be concreted with the slab, tapi tak buat. And the client wants you to do it, embed the conduit within the slab, then you have problem. Okay, so you might need to hack the slab and so on. So it's kind of common, you can see sometimes site tu, they need to hack the entire thing sebab terlupa nak pasang. Okay, so the sequencing is very important. Inadequate contractor experience pun sama. So sometimes when we are evaluating tender, those are the things you need to check. Okay, so the capability of the contractor, the experience, the completed project, do they have other project in hand yang dah lama tapi tak siap, their financial capability, okay, so whether they are able to actually, and then what are the equipment they have in hand, okay, so those are some important things that we need to check out when we are evaluating contractors. Okay, so other challenges by other stakeholder, for example, consultant, the growth of local firm. So imagine that the competition is so high. How many there are only that much design or designers that we require. Tapi the competition is that high. Okay, so everyone is opening their own consultant firm. The competition too much, what are you going to do? Okay, so finally you end up at the project. So that is the reason important that we need to look into opportunities kat luar. Okay, so how can we actually penetrate project overseas project, for example, or maybe project of a different nature. So you have to be smart about it lah if you're coming up with a business of your own. Okay, so how can you distinguish yourself from the others? Mungkin you can come up, you as a designer, you might be coming up with design which are environmentally sustainable. That is your niche area. Or you can come up with designs which are preventing accidents during construction. So that is the advantage over other common designers. So you have to be smart about that lah if you're owning your own firm. Okay, so adopting environmental friendly operation, okay, ataupun designing environmental friendly material, Okay, so facilities with environmental friendly material, especially precast. Okay, so you might be having this expertise in designing precast element. So that will give you an edge compared to designers lain yang mungkin just know how to design concrete je biasa in situ. Okay, efficiency in management, especially their own resources lah. Okay. Um, for the laborers, okay, so challenges for the laborers, okay, one illegal immigrant labor worker. This is one of the issues that we have for quite a while juga lah. Okay, it's like chicken and egg lah sebenarnya. We need them, but at the same time, it is difficult. And with the current situation where we can't get workers, what do we call it, with proper immigration documents, so we can't get, but project kena jalan, so that's why sometimes you get this kind of situation lah. So there are some workers who are already here tapi dia tak ada document rasmi, okay, but you need the project is ongoing and you need them, so in comparison, so sometimes it's quite difficult juga situasi. And that is the genuine situation yang honestly in need of that. But there are also some organization would acquire immigrant workers because they're cheap. And sometimes what happen, they work for a month. Okay, so they keep them for a month. And because you don't want to pay them for at the end of the month, you report them to the immigration and kena serbu. Sometimes in a way kesian juga you look into the immigrant workers too, because, well, yeah, something like that lah with their living situation yang agak teruk tu. Okay, shortage of workforces, now we are having that problem. Okay, so especially when during COVID semua dah balik, and then when now our economy is running, everything is open, now we are short of them. Okay, and lack of skilled laborers as well. Okay, so okay, these are just in summary of it. Okay, so this one I've mentioned it, changes of drawing because of the client's changes requirements, late payment, time constraint, excessive overtime, cost overrun as well, absent, okay, of labor. Yeah, I think huge number of foreign workers as well. Okay, and inflation. Okay, all right. So these are some factors that contribute to delays. Just some. Okay, it can be so many others. Land acquisition usually happens at the front end of a project, especially if your land involves so many different owners. Okay, and if your land requires providing the owners compensation, banyaklah the problem. And also, if your land is not the land intended for your project, if let's say your project is to develop factory, for example, okay, chemical plant area, for example, tapi the original land is actually, there is a title or originally for agriculture. Untuk tukar agriculture land to this chemical plant tu will take quite a while juga, because to change the status of the land though, it's not easy. So land acquisition itself could be quite a headache at the front end of the project. And if you require to relocate squatters, so sebenarnya relocation of squatters ni banyak during 1990s macam tu. If you dah lahir ke you all? Mungkin belum lahir kot saya rasa. So during that time, basically KL area, we have quite a lot of rumah tinggan, squatters ni. Okay, so rumah tinggan whereby people just come in, build houses, and slowly it grew into quite a huge squatters. And when the government intend to develop that land, they get this itulah disapproval by the squatters too. And then, sometimes it happens, they just go in and just break off all the squatters and so on. So relocation lah. Kalau at least berhati perut, then you relocate them to PPR and so on. Okay, so relocation. And also relocation of utilities, especially your project is on any electrical punya supply or any running of piping and so on. So you need to relocate if there are requirements for that. Okay, unsuitable sites. Okay, unsuitable sites are sites which maybe brownfield area. Okay, so or maybe mining area. So those area are not green. You might need to do remedial action for it. Okay, so you need to do ground improvement, landfill area. So those areas you might need to invest quite at the front end to ensure that the ground is okay, good enough. Okay, and then lack of equipment, material, and manpower. Okay, so variation order. So variation order are job or tasks that is beyond the contract. Okay, so sometimes happens that at the construction site, the contractor would identify there are certain processes or activities that needs to be done, tapi it was not listed in the contract. So when it's not listed in the contract, tapi needs to be done, the contractor needs to come up with a proposal, submitted to the consultant. And if the consultant mentioned that, okay, terpaksa, kena buat juga, then the client will need to pay additional from what has been agreed in the contract. So variation order will take time because it will go back and forth with the contractor, consultant, and also the client, just to ensure that, okay, the client is ready to pay for the variation order. Sebab this is additional cost to the client. Okay. And then delays in decision making, sometimes it happens, and if we have problematic contractors. Okay, so in the CIMP, there was the original one. So 7 strategic trusts were identified. So we have all the problems, more or less, and these are some of the ways that they have thought through at the point of time to address the problem. Okay, so the first one is to integrate the value chain. Okay, so construction industry value chain to enhance productivity and efficiency. So basically to come up with an integrated value chain. So normally one we can do basically is through a procurement system which is more integrated in manner. Okay, so the common procurement system, traditional, you have the client, you have the consultant, we have contractor hired at the different time. Okay, so normally client will come out with the design, the tender with the consultant, and then the open tender invite main contractor. So bila macam tu, all the entity work in a silo. So and the contractor and consultant would have discrepancies. But if we have a procurement system whereby it is design and build, okay, so the design and build being done by one organization, then it will or joint venture. So that could actually save quite a lot of discrepancies sebenarnya. Okay, so integrated in nature. Second, CIDB actually requested to strengthen the construction industry's image. Okay, try to remove the dirty, dangerous kind of like image. Okay, so third, strive for the highest standard of quality, occupational safety and health, environmental practices. Okay, so fourth, develop human capacities. Fifth, to innovate through R&D and new construction method. 6 is basically to leverage on information communication technology, particularly in the use of BIM. And 7, to benefit from globalization. Okay, so this is the one that they are trying to internationalize our industry. Okay, so trying to actually encourage or promote the contractors and also consultants to the overseas. Okay. All right, and this is the final slide, I think. Okay, so the importance of project management. So these are some of it. Okay, so one is to enhance people's skill. So true project management is where you can actually polish the leadership skill, communication skill. Okay, so this is where you're going to do that. Flexible but structure oriented. So basically project management, it provides you the processes, it provides you the procedure, but it should not be rigid. Okay, so there are certain flexibility that should be introduced. Okay, but however, you should actually still follow the procedure. Cuma certain elements could be changed. Okay, so for example, input to a certain processes. For example, if we are talking about coming up with a schedule. So besides WBS, what are the other tools that we can actually introduce? Okay, so flexible but structured in nature. Efficient and effective. Basically, there are tools introduced for us to balance the three main criteria. Okay, cost, time, and quality. Okay, so this is where you will go through to look into what are the planning. Okay, so good planning and so on. And also human focus. Okay, so it's focused to one work, project, complete, achieve goal. Okay, so if you look into project management, it is not only the tools, not only the techniques, it's about how to manage the people. So that's important. Okay, so far, any question for this topic? Anywhere that you need me to explain ke? Any question?
No, madam.
Clear ke? Dah clear macam ni, test sepatutnya 100% je. I would expect like it will be 100% because there are no question. Okay, so if there are no questions, then we end the class today. I think tomorrow, okay, tomorrow I will need to provide you the assignment though. Okay, so I think with that we can end the class for today. So thank you very much, class.